On to our next one. This is our final focus for the day. And this is my favorite animal. The moose is a distinctive animal. And with the moose is the largest hooved animal in North America. A cow moose, a female, will weigh between 600 and 800 pounds. A bull moose, the male, will be between 900 and 1,200 pounds approximately. The male also has a distinction in that not only is he 7 feet tall at the shoulder, but he has what's known as a giant massive rack. Okay? And this massive rack is 6 feet in diameter. So I am not a tall man with a large wingspan. So my wingspan here is not 6 feet. So you can imagine this massive rack on top of a 7 foot tall, 1,200 pound bull moose. The rack itself weighs 75 pounds of hard bone-like antlers. So if he was angry, he's coming at you. That massive rack, moose doesn't have a whole lot to worry about when he's got that massive rack on top. And so a pack of wolves, he can just toss those wolves left and right. He's got those big giant spikes there on the top of those antlers, and he can just toss wolves around. Bears, he can fend off a bear. And if they don't have that, because the rack is not on there all year round, they shed and grow that back every year. So how do they survive then? Well, the hooves are very, very hard themselves. And if you want to YouTube moose stompings, you'll see some pretty horrific stuff. I'm not kidding. A cow moose can kick back with her hind hoof and kill a bear. That's how much force she can generate. So, very important. Also, they have long, spindly legs. With the long, spindly legs, they can run through deep snow much better than even a pack of wolves can. So they can outrun a pack of hungry wolves with their long, spindly legs. The problem with the long, spindly legs is when a car or light truck hits that beast, the top heavy weight comes down and usually crushes the people in the cab, and that's how people are often killed. A friend of mine in high school, true story, was killed when his pickup truck hit a moose. He wasn't killed, interestingly enough, by the weight of the animal hitting him, but it stopped him. He was going like 45, 50 miles an hour, hit the moose, stopped. In the bed of his truck was an unsecured spare tire that flew forward at 50 miles an hour and hit him in the head and killed him. But that's a true story from my childhood. So there's a lot of ways that these animals running across the road, deer or moose, can be a hazard. When I grew up in the North Shore of Lake Superior, and there were lots of opportunities for recreation out in the woods, like hunting, fishing, hiking, canoeing, swimming. We would jump off cliffs into the water and by waterfalls, and it was just a great time. But work opportunities were somewhat scarce. So some of us teenage boys would work for the U.S. Forest Service planting trees. And when we planted trees for the Forest Service, we worked in groups of 8. And what we would do is we would plant trees, and we'd get paid $100 a thousand. Okay? You plant 1,000 trees, you get $100. So give or take a few bucks. So you'd have seedlings strapped to your hip in a bag, and you have like 100 seedlings, and you take a tree planting device, make a hole, plant the trees in, roots down of course, pack it in, move on another 6 feet, plant another tree. Okay, so it was hard work, a lot of challenges in the environment, but there's a lot of opportunity for that in the north because of two things. One, forest fires. They clear the land after a forest fire and then they replant it. And secondly, logging companies will harvest trees, and if they're good with the environment, what they'll do is hire teams of tree planters to go through and plant the areas they've harvested so that they can have more trees later and take good care of the environment. So I joined a team. There was about 8 of us, and we worked with a forest ranger named Bob. They didn't want teenage boys running around the forest by themselves, so they gave us a forest ranger. Bob was about 55, 60 years old. He was all dressed in green, the Forest Service uniform, patches and everything, and big knife on his hip. And Bob had one of these Smokey the Bear hats, and he had a big old Duck Dynasty beard that he'd pluck things out of all the time, And Bob Bob knew so much. He taught me so much about the forest. He taught me bird sounds, the loon, the sparrow. He taught me about the signs of the forest, the tracks the animals leave. Bob could even identify animals from their poop. We were walking on a trail and there's a steaming pile of something there. He'd break off a twig. He'd fish through the poop and then he'd tell you what that animal had for breakfast, just by what they left behind there. So Bob was a wealth of knowledge. Well, one day after we'd been planting and working especially hard, Bob took us on a field trip. It was almost sunset, and so Bob took us on this field trip. We went for about a mile hike into the woods. And in this mile hike, we came to the edge of a valley. Now the dimensions of the valley, if you can visualize Hemet High Stadium, that's kind of the dimensions of the valley. We were perched up on the edge of the valley, so that would be like the top bleacher in the stadium. You're looking down into the valley. There's a beautiful sparkling stream running through the valley, the floor of the valley. That would be like on the football field. Okay? And we were behind some bushes. So we're standing there waiting. It's getting dark. Not quite dark, but getting there. And we're standing there waiting. And I'm like, why are we waiting? Well, just be patient. And we hear a sound across the other side of the valley. We heard a couple twigs snap, and out steps from the bushes a cow moose. She sniffs the air a little bit, goes down, gets a drink from the stream, and starts nibbling on some vegetation along the side of the stream there. Well, that's kind of neat. You see an animal interacting in its natural habitat. It's better than a zoo, right? So, but that wasn't a big thrill. So we waited a little bit longer, and then we heard another noise, a larger animal coming. And sure enough, out stepped the largest bull moose that I'd ever seen. Big old, giant, massive rack. He snorts the air, sniffs it a little bit, gets down, gets a drink. As soon as he gets down and gets a drink, puts his face in the water,